Hey y'all, Fred here. Thanks so much for joining me today as we are going to take a look at this Sencut Pulsewave knife. This is another one of a batch of knives that I got for Christmas. You know, when you get to our age in life, I'm willing to bet some of y'all can understand this. Everybody asks you, what do you want for Christmas? And like, you don't know because you have pretty much everything that, you really feel like you want or need in life. And, you don't want to ask people for $300 knives. So I needed a batch of low cost, affordable, yet high quality knives in budget steels that we can do testing on in our cut testing. So I asked everybody to get me a different version of knives. I got one in D2, one in 8CR13, one in 9CR18 MOV, which is what this knife here is. And we're going to put them through their paces because I know and can feel confident that the knives were heat treated properly to a good HRC rating, and that's going to give us a great baseline test. If you are not familiar with Sencut at all, they are part of the 𝗦𝗲𝗏 and 𝗕𝗂𝗏 brand. So 𝗦𝗲 is their top tier line, $200, $300 and up on their knives. Really nice stuff. 𝗕𝗂𝗏 is kind of the mid-range, could go anywhere from typically 50 to maybe 100, 150 bucks. And then Sencut is their lower end price range, usually around the $40 to $60 range. Although I'm going to tell you, the lines between Sencut and 𝗕𝗂𝗏 are really getting blurred with a lot of these knives that they've put out here lately. These definitely give the 𝗕𝗂𝗏 line a run for their money, except maybe the steel. So 𝗕𝗂𝗏 doesn't typically put out 9CR18 MOV steel in their knives, but the designs and the overall fit and finishing quality are definitely on par with anything 𝗕𝗂𝗏 produces. So again, this is a beautiful, it's called the Pulsewave model. It's 9CR18. They say it's a HRC rating of 58 to 60, so that's really good. Nice towards the top of that range. That's going to give us an excellent baseline for doing our cutting test. Before we get started in too deep into it, though, if you would please down below here, hit that subscribe and notification bell. That really helps us little guys like that get found on YouTube. YouTube really will show our videos to more people when they see that you guys who are watching either subscribe or even just throw me a thumbs up. That like button, man, that helps tremendously as well. It sends a signal that says, hey, we should maybe share this content with more people. So thanks y'all so much for doing that. I really do appreciate it. It does make a big difference. All right, I always like to start with taking a look at the box. Let's take a look. This is standard fare for everything you get just about these days from any kind of affordable or even expensive brand. You've got a box, you've got, your zippered pouch, fur line, comes in plastic. You usually get a sticker or two, which is what you got here, your warranty, and a nice little microfiber cloth. All standard fare, but they put the same stuff in there. They didn't chintz out on that. They gave you all that. Although, I just assume they put the money into the knife myself, because I probably won't see most of that again in the future. But it is what it is, and I'm certainly glad that, they're staying competitive on that end. Let's take a quick peek at the specs. I'll bring those up here on the screen. You can see down on the left-hand side there, this thing is almost a full 8 inches, just a hair under 8 inches. That makes it a very nice, I'm going to call medium to full-size knife. The blade is just under 3.5 to the scales, but you've got about a 3.2-inch cutting length there. Closed, it's 4.5 inches long. Certainly fills the hand nicely. Will fit in just about any size hand or glove. I'm a size large, and you can see choke back, still plenty of room there. Choke forward, tons of room for everybody. Nice thin blade on this, just a hair over a 1/10 of an inch, 103 thousandths if you prefer that version. That's a nice thin slicey blade. Handle thickness is right at 1/2 inch thick, which I actually like. That gives it good hand filling for like a lot of confidence, especially for good hard work. Satin finish on the blade. This is a partial flat. You can see the top half is, or the top, I don't know, maybe 20% is not finished. What that does though is that also means that it stays thick out to the tip, which gives you a nice strong beefy tip out there. The scales are G10. In case you can't tell that, nice texture G10 over steel liners. They're lightly shadow box, which means you can just barely see the edge of that steel. Very well done. The blade steel, as I mentioned, 9CR18 MOV. They actually do say it. I have no idea how that's going to come out, but you can barely see it right there at the tip of the scales. It again, 58 to 60 HRC. That's great for a 9CR. The weight comes in just under 4 ounces, 3.83. Definitely easy to carry in the pocket. This is a button/plunge lock. You have to, I guess, be clear on that these days because there's so many new button locks that are actually compression locks. So this is the plunge lock version of the button lock. They do an excellent job with it. We'll take a closer look at that in a minute. It comes in under $45 right now. I do have a link below. That is an affiliate link. It certainly helps the channel out, helps me be able to afford to buy more knives. I don't get very many knives sent to me to review for free. Kind of, you know, that's the deal when you have a channel like mine. I did measure the behind the edge thickness on this blade. This comes in pretty thin at a 15 thousandths. That means this is a very slicey blade. It came very sharp from the factory. So we're going to take a look at the sharpness here in just a minute. It is a bit of a fingerprint magnet on that nice satin steel. All right, let's take a closer look at this thing. I always start with the pocket clips. This is 𝗬𝗲 standard fare pocket clip. They put it on pretty much every 𝗬𝗲 and Sencut knife. I mean, almost every model has this. Everybody complains about it, that this tip sticks up. It's quite pokey in the hand. It's also a potential snag magnet sticking out of your pocket. However, they recessed it down into the G10 scales and used flat screws, so they have, you know, they've designed it and built it and implemented it very well. This is what I'm going to call definitely a full deep carry pocket clip. That's another bonus. It is fully reversible. They don't use a filler tab, but I mean, what do you expect on a $45 knife that comes with this kind of overall quality and finish, you know, at that price? But nice and reversible for your lefties out there. You can easily replace these. That's what I meant to say. 𝗬𝗲 sells milled titanium pocket clips that you can use to replace these. So, for example, I used this clip. I could take this off of this 𝗬𝗲 knife, and these clips will fit in here as well. By the way, I didn't do any size comps. Let's go back and knock that out before we get too much farther in there. Sorry, this is again harder to tell. Again, this is almost an 8-inch knife. We'll compare it to the Benchmade Crooked River, which is huge, and it falls nicely in between the size of that large Crooked River and the typical Benchmade bug out. If you're a Spyderco guy, certainly compares very favorably with a PM2 or the Para 3. Fits again in between those, much closer to the Para 2 size, but a little bit smaller. And I think you get much more of a cutting edge. You get a little bit more blade on that, on the Sencut, than you do even on the Para 2. Something a little bit more modern. I was just using this. We can look at it again, the 𝗬𝗲 Vision FG. These things are almost the exact same size. And the Pyrite Light. This is the regular, not the large version, so it's certainly bigger than the Pyrite Light. Very comparable in size and overall length to the 𝗬𝗲 Vision FG. But again, you can see in terms of total blade length, it's going to be roughly close. It's a little bit more, just a little bit more on blade, but different style, bigger belly, so very different knife there. Hopefully that gives you a better sense. All right, back to our knife deeper dive. Non-captive pivot. You can see it's a T8 on both sides. They use T8s for the body screws, although T6s for the pocket clip screws, which is fine, no big deal. That's standard fare as well. The tension is good. I will probably, if I wanted to carry this, as again, replace it with that milled tie clip there. They did countersink the screws into the scales, so nothing protrudes. It's all very nicely done. The fit and finish overall is really good on this knife. It does have a non-captive pivot, as I mentioned. Stop pin is typical, but here's where they really drop the ball on this knife. And this is where I'm going to have one of my biggest complaints. They have a second stop pin. This is one of those knives that has a second stop pin just for the closed position. So in the open position, this is your stop pin, right? A little bit of blade shouldering. That blade hooks right around that stop pin there. But in the closed position, that blade tang comes back and hits this stop pin. Here's the problem with that. Let's see if I can get this to show on camera in just the right amount of light. This right here is where that stop pin hits. So let me turn this around and put this right here on that, where that stop pin goes. And now you can see the problem. You're not going to get a whole lot of sharpening on this knife before you're going to start missing that stop pin, because it comes into contact right here with the blade. I don't know why they do this. Let me give you an example. I just did a video on this Sencut Serene. Same designer. They're both just Sencut in-house designs, right? Very similar overall. I mean, you can see a lot of similarities, a little bit of difference in the blade shapes. We'll talk about that in a minute. But for some reason on the Serene, they use one single stop pin, right? So that works for both the blade in the open, and then this flipper tab comes back and contacts it in the closed position. there is no second stop pin contacting anywhere on this side of the blade. Why in the world couldn't you just have done that with this knife? So this is one of my biggest gripes, in addition to the actual flipper tab itself, which is not as good. If you just extended that flipper tab like they did on the Serene and let the flipper tab contact this top pin, or even move it up a little bit, like you can see they moved this stop pin a little higher up here, move it to the same position, move this pin up here like you did this, and now you have no issues. But as it is, because that stop pin contacts the blade right here, man, that really limits the amount of sharpening that can be done. So this is like a mixed bag. I'll show you a lot of comparative features between these two knives. If they had taken just a couple of design cues, specifically that whole flipper tab and stop pin setup, and use that on this knife would be so much better in so many different ways. But I don't know why they did that. Same designers, like they don't talk to each other. They both made these knives roughly at around the same time. In-house designers, why are these guys not talking to each other about little things like that make a big difference? All right, the lockup on this thing is absolutely rock solid. No issues there, no detent, no pivot lash. Of course, there is no detent ball. This is just simply the plunge lock spring that provides that tension. But y'all, I mean, you can hear it's almost clicky like a detent ball is. I mean, that's as good as it gets on a detent. I say as good as it gets. It could be a smidge stronger. So again, problem number 2 is with this flipper tab, because it has that point on the top. If you're a push button person, one, it kind of hurts because you're grinding your fingertip into a relatively sharp pointing tip. The jimping is okay on this side, does not continue at all on the back side. So push button is almost always going to fail this knife. However, if you're a light switch guy, it's more difficult to fail. You can fail it if you really try, but you're not going to in normal use. Just even a light switch there, flip the switch there, is going to get that thing open. And as far as the thumb studs, reverse and forward, great action on both sides. Again, you can see there, you can fail it. Now, one of the other issues with these thumb studs, so these thumb studs, let's see if I can get that in focus. They're kind of rounded domes at the top of this here. You can see that. There's a little bit of a sharp edge right there, but what happens, especially if you use your fingernail to reverse flip, is that it's easy for your fingernail to slip off of that domed, and you probably will see me do this, and it causes you to fail the flip. So they could be a little bit sharper on those thumb studs. The other thing I'll mention is that they sit quite a bit out, potentially in the cutting path. I guess it depends, because you've got this large choil in the front, so that's not directly in your cutting path. But again, as a nice comparison, look where they tucked the thumb studs into this Serene version of the knife. Again, same company, same designers, same time of putting out these knives. Look where this thumb stud sits compared to this. And there is no loss of quality or flipping action by putting those studs there. I just did a review on this knife. If you haven't checked it out, go see it. So that's a couple of misses. Is it terrible? No. Can you still flip this knife all day long in forward and reverse? Detent could be stronger, but certainly I've had a lot that were a lot weaker as well. It's tough to get a plunge lock detent really dialed in well like that. But the lockup is good. Flipper tab is okay as long as you're light switching it. It can hurt if you're trying to do the push button. Talked about the thumb studs, the detent. It rarely bounces out for some reason compared to that other. Now, the Serene that I just showed, it tends to bounce out. This one, it doesn't bounce very much, and that's unusual. It's more usual for these things to bounce out. For some reason, this just likes to stay put, so that's a really nice plus. All right, let's talk about the scales real quick. These are obviously G10 over steel liners. It does have that texture, that nice grippy G10 texture, so it's definitely not aggressive in any way, but makes you feel like I've definitely got a good grip on this knife. Certainly it's going to work better in wet conditions as well. I'm going to call that darn near perfect. It's not rough, it's just grippy enough. They do have some heavy internal milling. Let's see if I can get a light to bounce off there. It's very heavy. They've got big triangular pockets on both the top and bottom. Let me throw a light in there. That makes it a little bit better, doesn't it? Let's see. Yeah, there you go. You can see some of those triangles in there on both sides, top and bottom. So heavily milled steel liners to keep that weight down. and that came, those are really nice there. All right. The recess button is solid. It's a good way to do it. It had a tiny bit of lock stick. So almost all these from 𝗦𝗲𝗂𝗃𝗃 and 𝗦𝗬𝗃 and Sencut will come with a little bit of lock stick at first. After about 200 flips, it's almost gone now. It's basically now just a little bit of what I would call a haptic feedback. So you know you've pushed the button. It does take, you know, a decent amount of force to push that button. There is no way, even when you are choked up here, that you can get to that button. If you have maybe super long fingers, I have a size large glove, as I said, I don't know how you would be gripping this thing to where you could get a finger on that. Potentially the pad of your forefinger if you're a lefty, but because it's recessed and because it takes, I have not been able to, in my attempts, accidentally depress this button. Again, the lock stick started out fairly noticeable and now is all but gone, and I really like what is left because it lets me know confidently I have just pushed that button. 𝗦𝗲𝗃𝗃 and 𝗦𝗁𝗃 have the button locks dialed in. You can pound this thing all day long. These do not break free. This is no exception to that. So really well done lock. Obviously, it's very fidgety. That's why people love the button locks. You can sit and fidget and flip this thing all day long. Of course, I said you can't bounce the blade, and here I am bouncing the blade out there. All right, let's talk about this blade, because when I first saw it, I thought, well, it's a bit of a weird shape, isn't it? It's kind of an odd shape. What's that whole dent about? So two things. When I get it in hand, I get it now. I totally get it. So first of all, you got a little bit of a ramp there with some jimping. That's when you're holding it back here. Got a nice, that flipper tab gives you a nice deep choil, almost prevents you from locking. So if you're cutting into something this way, you feel really locked in from back here. That's all day long goodness right there. But a lot of us, me included, loves to choke up. And that's where this little swell, I'm going to call it this thumb spoon, fits perfectly for cardboard or even hard use. Like when I'm in the cut test, cutting on that wood stick there, I really want to be choked up here in this position, and that's very comfortable. It also reduces the pressure of that pocket clip on your hand there. So I get it now. I understand, and I love this design based on this grip right here. So that fits really well. Obviously, it's running on bearings, open face ceramic bearings. These are actually, although, you know, it's not an expensive knife, they're, you know, cheaper looking bearings, very smooth. A lot of these knives, when you get them, you can really feel those bearings rolling around as that blade comes around. You can see this thing is, let me get my finger, you have to get, you know, push it tight. This is smooth, and it feels smooth. That feels much more expensive than it is. So really, very smooth action. The blade centering came dead on, no issues there. Sharpening choil I've already talked about because of the way the second stop pin hits it. That's just almost unusable at that point. You're not going to be able to do it. But let's talk about the sharpness of this thing, because I will tell you, this came as a laser beam. This is a 10 out of a 10 on the old redneck sharpness scale. Just like a hot knife through butter, clean edges, no hang-ups, 10 out of 10. So this is going to be great. Again, for the testing, which is the whole purpose of getting it, was that I wanted to be able to test it for the cut testing to see how well a good 9CR18 steel will hold up. And I'm pretty happy with that. Minimal branding. They always do this Sencut thing on here. There's nothing on this other side, as you've seen there. You know, wish they didn't do it, but they do. And, you know, it's an affordable knife. I kind of get it. I guess they want to advertise to their people who are buying this knife. All right, ergonomics. Again, it fits great in the hand. The thicker G10 over steel makes it just, you know, that ½ inch thick fills the hand perfectly, but is certainly not overly thick. That clip is a little pokey, as I mentioned. You've got a great, you know, rear holding position for all day cutting and pushing into materials. You've got that great forward position there. The jimping is plenty grippy enough. The G10 is grippy enough. As far as ergonomics, this thing is, you know, a 10 out of a 10. It just feels great in the hand. As far as negatives go, again, pocket clip is pokey. The flipper tab has a bit of a sharp point, you know, which is not an issue if you're light switching this. I keep wanting to go for the lock bar down there on this knife for some reason. But anyhow, a little sharp, but not a big problem. Thumb studs can be a little slippery. If you're using a fingernail to flip that thing open, that can potentially be an issue. And really the biggest problem is that stop pin. It's just, I can't tell you how much that breaks my heart. You know, not a problem until about the third or fourth time you go to sharpen this knife. So we'll see, because I will do some sharpening after I do the cut testing with it. All right, bring it on home. Overall impressions. You know, originally I thought maybe I liked the 𝗤𝗏 better as a knife. I did, again, a review on this knife. Really nice knife. But the more I've held this, this is far more ergonomic and going to be way more comfortable if you've got to do some all-day cutting. You know, you need this at your job because you cut a lot of straps or boxes or cord or whatever you need to do this for. If I had to carry a knife all day at work, I'm definitely picking this over the 𝗤𝗏. It feels the hand better. It's grippier with that G10. It's got better ergonomic positions. If they would have just put that 𝗤𝗏's flipper tab with the single stop pin on this knife, man, this would have been an absolute home run knife. It's such a shame that they missed on that. I mean, overall, multiple deployment options. It's very smooth, good action, great solid button lock on this thing. No issues with that. If you're looking for a great quality, affordable beater knife, you don't mind having a good high quality 9CR18 steel, good HRC ratings, can do some definite hard work and take some abuse and work all day long, and then easy to sharpen back up at the end of the day or end of the week. Man, this is a great option to consider. So I'm really glad that I chose this one. It was almost chosen at random just because I needed a good 9CR18 knife, and I got a much better knife than I thought I was going to get. Again, I'll put the links down below where you can check this thing out on Amazon if you want to check one out for yourself. That is an affiliate link. You'll be helping me out. It really helps, and I definitely appreciate it. So thanks so much if you do that. Otherwise, if you would please, down below here, hit the subscribe and notification bell. Again, that helps us guys out, helps YouTube show our videos to more people. Throw me a thumbs up. Give me some feedback. What do you think about this knife? Has anybody had one of these or tried it? What do you think? Has it held up for you? I'm really interested to see how this might hold up with a little bit of extended use. So if you got any insight, share that with me. I always appreciate hearing from y'all. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks. Have a great day.